Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to all my fellow Democrats, whatever part of the state you happen to be. I hope that you're safe this evening from the fires, from you're protecting yourself from the smoke, and also staying safe with the pandemic. Seems like we can't catch a break here in California. We're you know, one biblical trial after another. But still the election date approaches, and as part of our work and our responsibility in educating voters about the people running for office on the ballot, it's also in the state of California very crucial that we engage in the statewide and local ballot measures as a party. And so we've been doing this series on called Prop Talks. I'm sure that some of you out there, this isn't your first one, and I've been hearing good feedback from activists out in the field about how useful this has been. So I want to thank everyone on staff and in the party leadership who've been making this a reality. But we want to talk about the propositions, not only just listing out what the party's positions are on them, but also giving folks some context and giving a platform for people who are doing the work out in our communities, whether it's legislative work, community organizing, or local reform aimed at making California a more just and socially sustainable place. So we've been grouping these ballot measures together by theme. Tonight, we're talking about 3 different ballot measures that all impact the system of criminal justice in this state, and our positions on all of them, of course, are informed by our platform and our principles of creating more justice, more pathways for people out who are stuck in the criminal justice system out of it, more equality in the way that we that people face legal proceedings, and of course, having social policy in general that moves this gigantic talent pool that we have that's wasted in our overcrowded prison and jail system, and puts those folks back into communities where they can help build our society and move us forward. So with that, we have a very distinguished panel tonight to talk about 3 different propositions. We've got Assemblymember Rob Bonta, who's been a champion of criminal justice reform in Sacramento, to talk about our affirmative position, hey Rob, on Prop 25. Dan Seaman, a policy expert and long-standing figure in the trenches of policy formation here in California, we'll talk about our no position on Prop 20, attempted rollback of progress that's been made on criminal justice reform. And finally, John Wyndham and Shay Franco-Clausen, who will talk about and give us some context and some history behind Prop 17 and the reasons for our support for it. But first, I have the honor of introducing our moderator for this evening, Latifa Simon. Latifa was elected to serve in District 7 of the BART Board of Directors in 2016, and in 2020 was elected president of the board. She's a nationally recognized advocate for civil rights and racial justice with over 20 years of executive experience advancing opportunities for communities of color and low-income communities in the Bay Area. And currently, she is also the president of the Akonadi Foundation, which is an organization based in Oakland that funds and nurtures and supports racial justice movement building to eliminate the structural racism that so many people of color in this state and in this country face, and expand opportunities, particularly for young folks. So I'm proud to introduce Latifa. Thank you very much. Sister, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. What a room. This is an amazing moment in time. There is so much angst. And at the same time, there is this movement that is, we feel it with every part of our being. And I want to thank the panelists tonight, and Vice Chair and Chair, thank you for having me really what an honor. So good evening, Democrats. California Democrats, we have a lot to do in only a short period of time, but I'm excited tonight to be your moderator to move a conversation forward. I'm thrilled that we're going to be discussing propositions 17, 20, and 25. And all three of these propositions and our panelists today will be talking about the importance of our focus on criminal justice reform. I deeply believe that we can get this right, Democrats. So today, before we get started, I have a few housekeeping rules, a few updates that will make sense for us to move through the conversation. I want to clarify that this event will not explore both sides of these issues. Tonight is an opportunity for us to share information about Cal Dem's stance on these key propositions and the ways in which we want folks to get involved in these campaigns. We have less than 50 days. So we're really, really clear. And these issues to us are at the core of our moving forward an agenda for all Californians. So the speakers from each campaign tonight will give you a bit of information on the propositions, followed by what I hope will be an amazing moderated panel, be more like a brunch conversation about these issues that are so close to our hearts. I want to have a very sort of an intimate conversation with the panelists. We'll do some Q&A. And I'll let you know when it's time to put your questions in the chat box. And so I want to thank audience members tonight. Some of you are cooking dinner, taking care of elders, taking care of your children. Some of you are working right now and took a little break to watch us tonight. So I want to thank you for your participation and your commitment to Californians. Before we move into the descriptions of the propositions, I'm so thankful for the introduction, Vice Chair. But these issues of criminal justice reform for all of us, everyone in this state is touched by what has not been done and what has been done to both create a carceral system that we know has not been effective, but also the thousands of folks for years and years. Like myself, I'm happy to be a part of the activist and organizer family who's fought for reforms myself for 25 years full time. 1 in 4 women in this state have someone in the criminal justice system. We can spew out stats, there's too many to share, but for me personally and politically, the time is absolutely now for us to rework a system that has not provided justice for all. So today, we have a number of speakers, but I want to start with, we're going to have a conversation about yes on 17. So 17 seeks to restore the voting rights in California by amending the California Constitution to allow Californians who have completed their prison terms to vote. I would like to introduce Shay, Franco Clausen, and John Wyndham to say a little bit more. You guys could take a few minutes and tell us a little bit about the great work you've done and also what's at stake. What is 17? Go ahead. And good evening.
Good evening. It's an honor to be here and to have you moderate it. It's amazing. So, you know, Prop 17 is simple. I think we're in the times right now, the civil unrest is across the nation. We are just going to make equity and inclusion a part of our state constitution. Actually, one of the co-authors is here with us tonight, Assemblymember Banta. It was actually, previously ACA 6, and now it's Prop 17 as it went with 2/3 support, bipartisan support, that is now going to restore the voting rights for those people that are on parole. That means they have been deemed to be released and go back home to their communities, pay taxes, work, raise their families. And the one thing that we don't get them is a fair stake in democracy. And so we're advocating, and we have the great support of so many of our progressive leaders, the governor, lieutenant governor, to right the wrongs of the Jim Crow laws that still have a cloud over California's constitution when it comes to disenfranchising Black and Brown, Indigenous, and Asian communities. Want to go, John? Want to say a few words?
Yeah, I'm John Wyndham, Initiate Justice. I myself am directly by Prop 17. It breaks my heart. I mean, that I can't vote. I'm a taxpayer citizen, yet taxation without representation. I have no say in what you do with my money. Do I not deserve that right? I'm like all other taxpayer citizens other than me returning back to my community from prison after serving my time. It's not just me, it's 50,000 other men and women do not have the right to vote. I never committed treason against my country. So why should I have that fundamental right stripped from me as if I have? And for me, it bothers me. And it has to change. It has to change. And that's what got me here today.
I'm muted. I was muted for a second, and I apologize. You know, Shay and John, if folks knew the work that you all are doing every single day, and I think many of us do, we would all be so humbled and thankful for your commitment to advancing democracy. Thank you for the update. And there's so much to say in less than an hour, and we will try to get everybody out on time. But if you're seeing these folks, definitely connect with their organizations. You're going to hear more about 17 tonight in the panel. Next up, we have Dan Seaman, who will be discussing no on Prop 20. Not everything is a yes tonight. We want to be clear that Prop 20 will set us back. Dan Seaman brings over a decade of policy experience to both the governor's office and the state legislature. Dan has most recently served as the deputy cabinet secretary to Governor Newsom, focused on criminal justice. Dan, please take it away. And I apologize if my microphone is not loud enough, so I'll try to speak a little bit louder so folks can hear me. Dan, take it away. You have a few minutes to explain no on 20.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Latifah, and to my fellow speakers tonight. These are all critically important issues that we're addressing with regard to our criminal justice system. With regard to Proposition 20, it's hard to overstate how regressive this proposed proposition is. It would quite simply take us back, it's no exaggeration, it would take us back 20 to 30 years in terms of our criminal justice policy in the state. It would unwind and get key reforms, smart, targeted reforms that have taken place recently in California that have saved taxpayer dollars and made us safer and reduced recidivism. It would get those provisions and would really set us back on this course of reform that we've wisely taken in this state. Very quickly, the specifics of this proposition: it would set the lowest felony threshold, one of the lowest in the country, for petty theft and minor offenses related to petty theft to a $250 threshold, which again is lower than states like Texas, Florida, others in the Deep South. It would go far beyond anything we've seen in this state. Would allow for a felony consequence potentially for stealing a bicycle or a bottle of alcohol, potentially. So that would be extremely problematic in terms of increasing our incarceration rate for very low-level offenses in the state at a time when, in fact, we know from the data that crime is one of the lowest rates we've seen in California. It would also establish a 3 strikes and you're out policy for probation violations in the state, no matter how minor the third violation was, whether you missed the bus or were late to an appointment. If it's your third probation violation, you would be then sent into potential revocation proceedings through the courts, which is contrary to 30 years of lived experience, all the science and research. It's why the chief probation officers of California strongly oppose Prop 20. It would also allow for DNA swabs upon arrest, not upon conviction, but upon arrest for very minor misdemeanors. And perhaps most importantly, these are all regressive and problematic provisions. It would also increase the difficulty, it would change the standard to achieve parole in this state, gutting Proposition 57, which was passed with a 60% margin by the voters, and make it far more difficult to achieve parole and to, in fact, earn your way towards an earlier parole date through positive programming and rehabilitation, thus removing the incentive to rehabilitate oneself while in prison, and potentially increasing victimization and recidivism. All of these are extremely unwise policies. They're ill-conceived, unnecessary, and wildly expensive. And the one benefit we have is 30 years of lived experience to know why we should definitely vote no on Prop 20.
Thank you, Dan. You know, Dan, you remind us that if we would take a trip back to the 1980s when California was throwing folks in prison at exponential rates. The war on drugs was a failure at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end. And so much of what so many of you all have done is not only write good policy, but work at the local level to try to rework horrific mistakes. Prop 20 will set us back. Will set us back, not just in terms of criminal justice reform, but you're absolutely right. These issues of racial injustice, of what safety means to all of us. This is an attack on not just 20 years of lived experience, but you add those 20 years of reform effort. So thank you so much. Dan, you know, we're doing good work and we need to do more, so we're so happy to have you here tonight. Our next speaker, who has just been an amazing trailblazer on these issues, he'll be delivering an update on Yes on 25. He became California's first Filipino-American state legislator. I can't believe that in like the last 10 years, we're still saying first, meaning that we have a long way to go, and we're so happy that he's with us. But he came into California's 160-year plus history into the state capitol to lead us on so many issues. He is a speaker who is passionate and elected who is passionate about the growing opportunities for a more equitable California. And it's always a pleasure seeing your face and working with you. I would like to introduce you all to the Honorable Assembly Member Rob Bonta. Bonta, thank you so much for being here, and tell us a little bit more about 25.
Thank you, Latifa, for your kind introduction, and honored to be here. I'm Rob Bonta, California State Assembly Member representing Oakland, Alameda, San Leandro. Honored to be on this distinguished panel. I'm all about all things Latifa Simon. So whenever I'm on a panel with you, Latifa, it's a huge privilege and an honor. And I just want to thank the California Democratic Party, including Chair Rusty Hicks, for your leadership in providing this resource to Democrats across the state. So good evening, Democrats. I'm here to speak in support of Proposition 25, which is a proposition of a slightly different type than the one you've just heard about, because it's a referendum on a law that I authored with Senator Bob Hertzberg as the lead author, SB 10, put on the governor's desk, signed by Governor Brown, and then immediately the for-profit, private, corporate, predatory bail industry spent millions of dollars to referendize it and put it on the ballot. And to me, it's absolutely critical that we not let the bail industry back into our pretrial detention decisions and into our pretrial system. Right now, we have a system that is fundamentally broken. It's unsafe, unjust, and unfair. It punishes poor people for being poor. It allows the jailhouse door to swing open and close based on how much money you have in your pocket. It judges people based on the size of their wallet instead of the size of their individual risk. And it's pay to play. And it is fundamentally wrong. It asks the wrong question. The question that it asks is, how much money do you have? And that is wrong, and we need to change it. And SB 10 does change it. It changes it so that now we have individualized, specific individualized pretrial public safety assessments using a risk assessment tool, a predictive tool that has a high degree of accuracy, but also with a judge to be involved on the medium and higher risk cases, so that every individual has a chance to put their individual humanity forward and be assessed not based on just a penal code section and an average of $50,000 bail, which is how our current bail schedules work, but based on who they are. And folks can only be detained if there's clear and convincing evidence that there are no sets of conditions of release that could lead to safe release and appearance at their next hearing. And so This bill is critical because this proposition is critical because it's the only law in the nation that completely ends money bail, commercial bail. It also ends all monetary conditions. So no one can be released with monitoring or with oversight and then be charged for it, because that's wrong to have to pay for restrictions on your own liberty. And also all data makes it absolutely clear that more Californians, tens of thousands more, will be released safely under this proposal. A minimum of 50,000 up to 140,000 per year who are now withering away in jail unnecessarily, unable to get to their jobs, often losing their jobs, losing their kids, losing their homes, losing their cars because they're in jail and they don't need to be. They're in jail pre-trial and convicted of nothing. So this is an important reform, and it's absolutely important that we stand up as a California Democratic Party and say the for-profit, private, corporate, predatory bail industry, we will not let you back in. We will not let you buy your way to a referendum and then buy an election so that you can continue to hurt and harm disadvantaged, vulnerable communities, communities of color. And the human impact is incredible. We have folks that are withering away in jail simply because they don't have the average bail, which is $50,000 in California. As a result, they lose their jobs because they can't show up for work. They can lose their kids if they're an only parent. They have young kids at home with no one to care for them. They could lose their home or apartment because they can't pay the rent. They could lose their car if it's parked in a time-limited space. And so it's unnecessary human damage and pain that we can avoid. We can do better. There's a better system and a better way. So this is our opportunity to put the bail industry in our rearview mirror. I was the author of AB 32, which ended for-profit private prisons and detention centers in California. I see this the same way. The for-profit private corporate industry does not belong in our criminal justice system. They're elevating profits over people. We need to proceed with more compassion, more humanity. And that's what SB 10 and Prop 25 does. So thank you for the opportunity to join you. And thank you to the California Democratic Party for endorsing Prop 25. And I hope you all share how important it is to support Prop 25 this year.
Thank you, Assembly Member. Now, don't go anywhere. For the next 10 minutes, I have an opportunity to talk to you all a little bit more about 17, 20, and 25. And let's state the record where it needs to be stated. Cal Dems, we are yes on 17. We are no on 20. We are yes on 25. It's extremely important that we figure out what our stump speech is for our friends at work, for our folks that you may see in the elevator, for your uncles and aunts and grandchildren, that we, as the state of California, must lead the nation in ensuring that safety is done right. So with that, we have about 10 minutes, and I would love to talk to Shay, to bring you back in the conversation, and John and Dan and Assemblymember Bonta. And let's go by proposition. Let's start with 17. I have 3 questions for the 17 team. And you can answer my question, or you can answer whatever you want, what you didn't get to say during your time presenting. But I'm curious about how the state would be better. How will California be better if 17 moves with this idea that folks who have served their time currently don't have the right to vote? How will the state be better? Number 2, okay, how can you help us sort of understand what the impact would be? So the question 1 and question 2 are very similar. How will California be better? And then what is the impact of us winning this particular move? And then lastly, what are your detractors saying? What are the folks on the other side saying? Well, I don't want you to give the issue, but why wouldn't everyone be for advancing the rights of folks to exercise their God-given right to vote? So you can take 1 or all 3 of those questions and take about 3 minutes, 3-4 minutes, both of you all, Shay and John, to just give us a little bit more of the fight that you're fighting, and hopefully answering a couple of those questions. Go ahead.
Okay, I could take the first part. I would say for my community, when one is civically engaged, he's less likely, 3 times more likely, not to engage in criminal activity or criminal conduct. you begin to care about what happens in your community. You begin to care about who's up to vote. You'll begin to care about elections. You'll care about all those things, right? And all that makes our community safer. We want our community civically engaged. And by giving us the right to vote, it allows us to become civically engaged and also speak to those in our community about becoming civically engaged. And that,
I think that's perfect. You answered all three questions in a minute and a half. So, Shay, why don't you talk a little bit about what the other conversation is on the other side? Why would anyone be against folks who serve their time being able to vote at the ballot box?
So I think that it's very important that we recognize that when people are valued members in their community, their voices matter and they're more likely, like you said, not to do crime. But to me, it's about equity and inclusion. It is about saying if we want a fair and transparent democracy, we want one that includes all the voices of California. I just actually wanted to say that I paid, because I need to know facts. You know, for me, it's facts. So right now, currently in California, as of August 31st, there's 55,627 people currently on parole. 4,177 are women and 51,450 are men. And let me break it down by demographics. 24,330 are Hispanic Americans, 14,231 are Blacks, 13,321 are white, and 3,745 are others. We make up, Black and Brown make up 2/3 of the prison system, and it was set up by design. Disenfranchised can go back to the foundation of California, and we all know how Jim Crow laws are there specifically for us. So with having that knowledge and understanding, I'm sorry? Understanding, oh, it was John. But having that understanding of what our nation is going through right now, we are standing in the streets, screaming, protesting, marching, and we have progressive leaders like Assemblymember Bonta, Kalra, Gibson, that are hearing our voices and making legislation that, you know, matches it. I think it's more important now that we include every person in democracy, because when they get out of jail and they come home, because the prison is a rehabilitation center. So they go through the parole board, they're deemed suitable to come home. They have to get an ID. They got to get insurance. They got to pay their taxes. They have to pay, get their kids in school. They have to have so many other requirements, but they don't have the right to vote. I think for me, it's very simple. Our civil liberties should be, a part of who we are. And stopping people from voting has nothing to do with the crime. And I think you said, what are the people on the other side saying? They barely say anything. They've been in 3 debates with me, and they haven't showed up for the other 32. So I think that I can say this. I'm actually a member of the African American, well, now Black Caucus on the executive board. I'm a delegate for Santa Clara County Democratic Central Committee, and I serve as Director of Gender and Equity, and I'm the first Black elected official, Afro-Latina lesbian, and the first who's formally incarcerated. So I want to say all those things, and I haven't given to you all, is to say that people like to design a stereotype and condition people to believe that we are these wild killers and rapists. But what to me it is the conditioning that we've had since the inception of this country is the same barriers they put on us and criminalize us for. So I would like to say on behalf of Prop 17 is that this makes sense. 15, 16, 17, no on 20, yes on 25, it all goes together. And this is the right time for us to take action. And I'm proud of the Democratic Party for stepping up. And I'm honored that, Assembly Bonta is here to co-author and, present this, because there's people in my family, in the community, and like John, who really need us who can vote, to vote for their democracy.
I think you both of you all made it plain. Don't go anywhere, because after in the next sort of 8 minutes, we're going to be taking some questions from the audience, and I'll be introducing my wonderful brother Vincent to facilitate that part of the conversation. I'm going to go to Dan. Dan, the stakes are extremely high. And again, our position, the CalDem position is clear that we're no on 20. You know, I could ask you the 3 questions that I asked my colleagues, but, you know, I want you to talk a little bit more about where the campaign is, the opposition, and how nervous should we be? And how should we be organizing right now to ensure that California doesn't go back 25, 30 years into an extremely regressive space? Tell us what the stakes are.
Well, you said it best. I mean, the stakes are very, very high with Prop 20. If this proposition passes, it sends at the exact wrong moment in our history an extremely negative message about the movement for reform and criminal justice policy nationwide, really. If people see that California passed such a regressive proposition, this would harm the national prospects for reform as well. So the stakes really couldn't be higher, both in human lives and impact, as well as the overall field of play with regard to criminal justice reform. And you know, I think I'd like to piggyback. I cannot say it better than Shay and John already did, but I'd like to piggyback on something in terms of why there is even an opposition to our stated democratic positions on these initiatives. And really, if you look at who is behind no on 17 and no on 25, who is behind yes on 20, you see for-profit profiteers in the bail industry, the private prison industry. You see police unions and prison special interests, all of whom seem to be, you know, I haven't seen any evidence to the contrary, driven by a very deep-seated, ideologically driven, punitive streak, which is not based in science, fact, research, experience, and in fact, does not make us safer. We know this. We've had one of the most punitive carceral systems in the entire world on planet Earth here in California for the last 30 years. And guess what? We had a higher crime rate. We had more recidivism. We had more hopelessness and people coming home without rehabilitation, without the hope that they need to start their lives again. So, you know, really, this it is practical, but it's also moral with regard to all 3 of the positions here on these propositions. You know, I think we should roundly reject that worldview. And in fact, Californians have rejected it on multiple occasions by supermajority numbers in terms of passing Prop 47, passing Prop 57. These were not close votes. And you'll hear the opposition say, well, people didn't know what they were voting on, you know, or the victims groups that, you know, some of the largest victims groups in the state that supported these measures didn't know what they were doing. They're not real victims. These are extremely insulting statements to tens of millions of Californians who have been impacted by these failed policies. Again, 20 is a mishmash. It's a grab bag of already failed criminal justice policy that's extremely expensive and doesn't keep us safer. So really, I just setting the stage for sort of the general perspective of the other side here is extremely regressive, extremely punitive, has no room for humanity or hope or redemption whatsoever. And I think that's completely at odds with why I'm a registered Democrat. I mean, you know, this is again, you asked about the stakes. These are very high stakes. So I could go through a litany of practical reasons that 20 is a horrible idea, including cutting victim services directly, cutting rehabilitative services directly, cutting crime prevention services directly by shrinking the savings in Prop 47, by increasing by tens of millions and by tens of thousands of inmates our prison budget, which at a time when we need to be investing in our communities is a horrible idea. I can go on and on and on, but as a general matter, you know, I think it's important to remember that this is not about shoplifting. This is not about, you know, collateral consequences. This is about really defeating a worldview that is devoid of redemption and hope. And I think that would be my general statement on all 3 of these matters.
You know, Dan,
I don't know if I answered the question.
You answered the question. I mean, you just dropped a mic. I'm trying to pick it up. I think, you know, what you're saying, for a lot of folks in the state, you know, I think we would all agree that, you know, folks have been told lies about how the systems of old worked to keep us safe. But you made me remember, you know, my early days when I was working for then DA Harris, and we were creating Back on Track. And this was before, you know, Prop 47. And the California Penal Code made it very clear that if you had 5 grams of crack cocaine for sale, that a district attorney in any county in California could put you in prison. Well, the judge actually makes that decision, and the jury puts you in prison for up to 20 years. You know what? That's 2 Splenda packets. And when I think about folks like the Survivors for Safety and Justice, tens of thousands of victims throughout the state of California who are saying absolutely no on 20. We want a system that works, that doesn't just disappear folks. We want a system that transforms people. So just thank you for that politic and that clarity, that if we go back to spending an exorbitant amount of money on a wasteful thinking that does exactly what the criminal justice system is not supposed to do, we will land ourselves in the dark ages. Thank you for that. You know, Assemblymember Bonta, I want to ask you a question off script, and Rusty and Baraka, don't get mad at me. Because you're here, right? And you've been leading on these issues for so long. You're an attorney. We've been talking about justice work for forever. I've seen you also out, you know, in the streets, you know, and you get these issues so deeply. With a majority of the folks in the building in Sacramento being blue, why can't we get criminal justice right? And what are the stakes around 25? Where's the campaign? So those are 2 questions for you. Why haven't we gotten it right? Meaning, why are we still a super incarcerative state, even with all the reforms? And we're moving towards, if we get things right, we'll be in a better position than we were. It's inch by inch, I get it. But what is it gonna take for us to do justice right in California? And why does 25 fit into that?
Thank you, Latifa. I'll say that we are on the pathway for reform in the legislature. That's been where all the arrows have pointed and all the action that's been taken. The only question is, how fast do we go? How aggressive are we? How transformational do we decide to be? And we have folks that have been, you know, like my colleague Assemblymember Kevin McCarty or Assemblymember Ash Kara, who are incredibly aggressive and seeking transformational change today. And others who want to go a little more slowly and then assess and then take another step. And so, and I'll also say, not all, we are supermajority blue in both houses. We have the trifecta with the governor and the 2 houses all blue, but not all Democrats are created the same. You know, there's definitely a difference between Bay Area Democrats and some in the Central Valley. They have different constituents, they have different values. They share our core values, our big tent values, our general values of opportunity and equity and justice and inclusion, but it manifests in different ways. So, you know, I have some of my own colleagues in my own party who are not supportive of some of the criminal justice reform that I promote and push. And you know, I take that as a challenge personally to convince them and provide them facts and data and evidence why it's good for me, why it's good for them, why it's good for our state. So, but I think we're moving in the right direction. More people are joining the movement, are getting on board, are seeing just how fundamentally broken our criminal justice system is and just how much more justice needs to be put into our criminal justice system. So, and Prop 25 fits right in that vein of the movement for change, the movement of transformation, the movement away from a broken system that is fundamentally asking the wrong question: how much money do you have? Versus the right question, which is, what is your individualized public safety assessment? And I feel just like Prop 20 would be a huge step backwards, failure of Prop 25 would be as well. It would send a message to the state and to the world that a for-profit private predatory industry can buy its way back into the criminal justice system and continue to do the damage and visit the harm and pain and anguish on California families and Californians throughout the state. And we always are proud in California that we stand on the vanguard, that we push, and that we're first. and that there's a reason why there's a statement in politics, as California goes, so goes the nation, because we see justice first and we reach out and grab it first. And to me, that's what Prop 25 is about staying that path, staying that course, making sure that we bring more and more people on board who want progressive, compassionate, humane, just, fair, safe policies, and making sure those who would get in the way, who would be obstacles, who would use their influence and power and money to put us back into the dark ages and send us backward instead of forward, are no longer part of that conversation.
I really appreciate you answering the question, because in reflection, criminal justice reform is difficult. Even if we all spoke the same language within the party about how and when, it is difficult. It is difficult to change. This was a very intractable system to build, and it's very difficult to transform it. And so thank you so much for all that you continue to do. Before we move into questions from the audience, first of all, folks, I want you to start thinking about what you want to ask these panelists and start typing those questions into the chat. I want to finish my portion of participation tonight in honoring the folks, all of you all, thank you, all of you all, but particularly the folks who have been leading the fight for 17. And there is an organization called Initiate Justice that is organizing families who wait every Sunday to see their loved ones inside. They're organizing with people on the inside, understanding that we're all Californians. And to see the organizing over the course of the years now land in the voters' hands, it's extremely phenomenal. So, John and Shay, I just really want to thank you all as directly impacted people committing your full life to democracy. So in 15 seconds, before we transition to the questions from the audience, I want us to hear 15 seconds each from both of you. Shay, if you can start us out of what people need to know about this movement of previously incarcerated people, not just 17, but what you want them to hold on to about the work that you're seeing and that you're doing. And then John, I would love to hear your thoughts.
So, I will tell you now, as our coalition is made up of mostly formerly incarcerated or people that are currently on parole. And so I think that I can't speak from their, lens. I never try to speak from someone else's experience, but I'll tell you, it makes me fight harder when I'm working beside John or Jose or Nikki, Alex, Carlos, because I know that their right to vote is in my hands. And so I think voter engagement is naturally who I am. I actually work in Elmwood in our county jails to do voter education, registration. And even in COVID, I held CDC and the DOJ, DOC accountable. And I said, I can make videos and you can put them in every single dorm to show people how to get their ballots completed, give them information. So I think even on the inside, those people that you don't realize are going to get out in 6 months that are going to be, on probation or parole. When you make sure that they feel like that we're thinking about them while they're on the inside, it really activates them to do more on the outside. And we have inside organizers. I think that we had a different approach of waiting for them to get out. And no, we have to be proactive. We have to give them a sense of commitment, a place to be, knowing that when they get out, they have a community that's going to advocate for their rights. So to me, it's phenomenal. They're my family now. And I learned so much, and we train each other on how to show up in community all over this beautiful state of California. So I think that's what makes me so happy.
Thank you so much for your work. John. Give me 15 seconds of what you want people to know about some of the work that you're doing, or you have, and we're going to go to questions after that. Give me a few seconds. Go ahead.
I'm tired right now. I work not only for Initiate Justice, but I'm also with Common Fellows. So many different organizations that not just myself, but fellow returning citizens are back out in the community already civically engaged. I don't have the right to vote, yet I'm out here on the campaign trail to get these bills passed and to help prevent those draconian bills that they're trying to put back on the books voted down. It's not just, like I said, it's not just myself. We care. We offended and caused great harm in our community. Allow us to be a part of the building and the restructuring of our community.
Yeah.
Allow us to give back.
I mean, that right there, if we can all literally just, you know, in our hearts and our minds, just, you know, chant when, remember what you just said, allowing folks to have the opportunity to transform and to give back. And through the democracy is such a way to do that. I want to thank you all for your work. I want to thank you. We're not done yet, Dan and Assemblymember Bonta, for taking the time out today, and for Shay and for John. I'm going to now transition the rest of our time. We don't have that much time left, but to Vincent, who's been working to bring us all together to have this conversation. He's going to take questions from the audience. And I want to thank you for having me as your moderator. California Democrats, we're going to win. All right, take it away, Vincent.
Thank you, my sister Latifa. And we're going to make sure that you get reelected as well. So we have a few questions. We're going to go very quickly to everyone. So Ashley Moises, can you unmute all the speakers so we can just let them respond quickly? So first, a question for Prop 25. If charged with rape, murder, or other horrendous crime, can the assessment tool allow the charged person to be released? Is potential danger to the public a consideration for holding in pretrial confinement?
The short answer is that there will be an individual assessment of that individual, looking at all the circumstances, including the crime and the severity of the crime that has led to arrest, including criminal history, but also including mitigating factors. You know, if they were ever released in the past and safely released, if they appeared in all prior appearances, or including anything that they or their attorney want to put forward for consideration, including you know, a home to go to with someone to you know, to be with them and to provide support for them and to help make sure that they get to their next appearance, etc. So it will get its due weight as one factor among many, but it's not an automatic detention, and it's not an automatic release either. And that's one of the beauties of Prop 25 and SB 10, is that it gives every individual what they deserve, an individualized look at their own humanity, their own experience, their own conditions, who they are. They get to be seen as an individual instead of just be reduced to an ATM savings account, you know, total, or you know, a penal code and a bail amount where they're not seen at all. So severity of the crime of arrest will definitely be considered. But, you know, fundamentally, we're not even asking the right question now. We're asking how much money you have. And now we're going to be asking, what are your individualized circumstances? So that is a transformational change for the better. And our system right now has led to the highest levels of pretrial detention in the nation. We have the highest bail amount. It averages $50,000. Even if you bail out, you have a non-refundable amount of about 10%, it's $5,000. Studies have shown that most Californians don't have more than $400 of discretionary money. So who's got $5,000? And 50% of misdemeanors are detained pretrial, and 70% of felonies. It's a fundamentally broken system, and SB 10 and Prop 25 will help fix it.
For Prop 17, will passage of 17 avoid what has happened in Florida, where returning citizens who owe fines or fees are denied their right to vote? No poll taxes. Person said.
Yeah, so as it's written right now, and Assembly Bonta would know best as well, is that we don't have that in our language. I think that we should celebrate that Florida was able to pass anything, considering it's Florida. And so as they fight now, as they're going against legislation, it wasn't going to be easy. But what it has is motivated people. And I say motivated those people to not only just go and lobby people, but actually show up and run for office. If you want to change outcomes, change the people making the decisions. And so I think that in California, we didn't have that written in ours. We're saying anyone that gets out that has been deemed suitable by the parole board has the right to vote. And once this passes, and I'll say that again, Once this passes, it is going to restore the rights of those people, and those people are going to be a part of the next bill that these lovely legislators put together, so that we can make sure that everyone has the right to vote.
And Shay, a follow-up question. Someone asked, isn't it true that felons who have served their time can vote? Is the issue just those on probation?
So yeah, I answered it. I'm sorry, I answered it to everybody.
Yeah.
So actually, it's if they are felons and they're getting out of prison, if there is no parole, if they haven't been, assessed and they have parole for 3 to 5 to 10 years, and some people get lifetime parole, then they have the right to vote. Misdemeanor and felony are completely different. As I mentioned earlier, I actually register, and people are eligible to vote in our county jails that are there on misdemeanors. This is for felonies. Those people are in prison who have that extension of parole that we're advocating for. Everyone else can vote.
This is a question I'm going to ask of everyone, and Dan kind of answered who was supporting Prop 20 and who were also opposing 17 and 25. But can you, can you guys share who is supporting Prop 17, who's supporting Prop 25? And I guess, and Dan, for you, who was supporting the no on 25 position?
So we have a coalition of people, obviously, that came together, like over 172 organizations in California. Our main coalition is White People for Black Lives, Vote Allies, Mi Familia Vota, let's see, ACLU, League of Women Voters, that's to name a few. But we've been supported by the Governor Newsom, Lieutenant Governor, obviously Vonta, Calra, Gibson, Weber. In addition to, I live in San Jose, and I just got my city council to unanimously support Prop 17, and I'm working throughout all of our cities and our counties right now in central committees to make sure that they also follow the party and support yes on Prop 17. We have little opposition, and I can tell you, because I work in the jails, is that even the COs and the local police association in my county actually support Prop 17. They're there, so that they are there as parole and probation officers to rehabilitate, to reduce recidivism, and making sure they have the right to vote is one of their key issues that they want to support.
So the no on 20 campaign is supported by a wide coalition, including some of the very folks that the yes on 20 campaign claim in their corner, which are victims and law enforcement. In fact, some of the DAs of the largest counties in California oppose this measure. One of the largest law enforcement associations in the state, the Chief Probation Officers of California, oppose 20. The largest crime survivors network in the state, CSSJ, Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice, as well as the coalition, the Partnership to End Domestic Violence, Ruby's Place, other advocates in the domestic violence space all oppose this measure, in large part because of what John said, is what they want is people to help repair the harm that they may have caused in the past, not necessarily to spend 3 decades in a cage. That's not justice for victims. They want a proactive justice and a restorative justice. So we have law enforcement, victims advocates, and a huge array of criminal justice reform advocates from Californians for Safety and Justice, Anti-Recidivism Coalition, down the whole list of who really works in the space and works in the jails and prisons.
Yeah, and a lot of overlap between the supporters of 17, the opponents of 20, and the supporters of 25. We have a broad coalition of criminal justice reformers and grassroots organizations seeking more justice and fairness and humanity in our criminal justice system, including Anti-Recidivism Coalition, Californians for Safety and Justice, Western Center on Law and Poverty, SEIU California is actually a big supporter, the California Democratic Party, obviously, Governor Newsom, Pro Tem Atkins, Speaker Rendon, the list goes on. So a big coalition of folks in support, and these major opponents spearheading the entire proposition is the opposition on it is the bail industry.
Well, thank you all for being with us today. Before we go, everyone who's watching, you can help us to make sure that we win on these initiatives. We have every Thursday, the California Democratic Party has phone banking opportunities where we're calling, it's like the state prop Thursdays, we're calling and just talking about the proposition. You can join us there. Also, on this Sunday, we have our day of action where we're talking about our Vote 2020 Truth Squad to be able to give you information to dispel the disinformation that's being put out by the other side to depress the vote. You can be a critical part of that process by joining us on the 20th, this Sunday, from 1 to 3, 1 to 3 p.m. Excuse me. Yes, 1 to 3 p.m. And next Wednesday we'll have another prop talk on Prop 22 and 23. There will be video of this prop talk available in the next few days. We will send the email out to you. We'll send a link to you all out by email. But you can also go to our YouTube page where you can find the one from last week as well. Thank you all again. I want to thank our Vice Chair, Daraka Larimore Hall, for getting us started, our amazing moderator, Lateefah Simon, our great panelists, and all of you for all that you do for our state and our party. We'll see you next week for our prop talk. Have a wonderful evening.